Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be looking at this problem: input a sentence and count the number of spaces. So the problem is just as follows, right? And for most of you, it seems pretty easy, right? We can just look at a sentence visually, right? So I have some examples here, right? So the first one, hi, my name is Ethan, because Ethan's my name. I have one space here, one space here, one space here, and one space here for a total of 4 spaces, right? We can count it visually, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But what if we have the empty sentence, right? We have nothing in it, it's just empty. Well, then it's going to be 0, right? Because there's no characters in here. There's no letters, no numbers, no nothing. So it's going to be empty. And what if I just have one space between individual letters? Then it's going to be a single space, right? So you can see that on the surface, this question is very simple. We just look at the sentence visually, and then we can count the number of spaces. But humans are not like computers, right? A computer does not know what a space is by looking at it like this. We need to find another way to somehow get a computer to notice what a space is. So how do we do that? Well, the approach here that we can take is we can do something called a linear scan. And what that means is we're going to go character by character, right? And at each character, we're going to look in the current character spot and see if that character is a space, right? So let's take this example, right? Hi, my name is Ethan. We can start at the character H, which will be at the first starting point 0. And we have these variables here that we keep track of. Remember what a variable is? It's basically a container where we can put a value in it. So we start at 0, right? It's a capital H. Is capital H a space character? No, right? So we don't do anything, right? We're going to go on to the next character. We're not going to increase the number of spaces. It stays at 0, right? Because H is not a space. And we move on to the next character. Okay. So next slide, right? Now we're at the I character. Is I a space? Well, no, it's not. But notice how the counter incremented, right? We started at 0 on H. Now we're at character 1. This counter basically keeps track of the current character we're at. So we started at character 0, which is H. We moved on to character 1, which is I. And then if we go to character 2, which is a space, then we're at counter 2. The current character is a space, right? So we increment the number of total spaces we have found in the sentence. And this process will continue until we get to the last character, which is n, and then we end the entire function and we're done with the program and we have found the correct number of spaces. So this is the current steps you would take to solve this problem. But it's pretty boring just to look at this in words. It's time to do it in code. Okay, so now I'm here in Scratch, right? And we're actually going to write this program. So I have written out in this comment the number of steps we should probably think about taking to solve it first, right? So the first part, how do we get an input in Scratch, right? So we have these blocks over here. We have a sensing tab, and we have an ask block. Remember what an ask block does? It accepts an input, right? So you can put it here, and then if we want to ask, change what the character asks, we can say like input a sentence, right? And if we run the code now, input a sentence, I can type, a sentence in here. Hi, my name is Ethan, right? And it'll run, but it doesn't do anything right now, right? It just asks input and it waits for input. You give it an input, it does nothing, right? That's kind of boring. So the next thing you want to do is, what variables do we need to keep track of the character we're on, and also the number of current spaces? So if we want to create a variable, we go to variables, and then we say make a variable, right? So remember what we did in the written example, right? We need the number of spaces that we currently have found, right? So let's call it num spaces. And we probably want one for the current character, right? The current character we're on. So we're going to create one as well, right? So now we have 2 variables, okay? And in every program, we need to set those variables to something. So we're going to set them up here before the ask, right? So we have a current character variable and the number of spaces, right? And num spaces we want to set to 0, obviously, because we don't have any spaces when the program starts because we don't even have a sentence yet. And the current character we're on also sets to 0 because we're going to be at the first character when the program starts. Okay, so step 3, how do we go character by character using a control loop? So a control loop is the keyword here. So when we think about the condition we're looking for, right? We go to control, okay, what kind of control statement do we need? Well, we're looking for until a condition happens, right? And the condition we're looking for is until we reach the end of the sentence, or in this case, when the current character is equal to the last character in the entire sentence, we know we're done. So if you look at the control statements we have available, we don't want to repeat a set number of times because you don't know how many times or how many characters are in the sentence, right? We don't want to repeat forever because we're eventually going to run out of characters. So let's see, we have a repeat until. Well, that looks interesting. It looks like we can put a condition in here, okay? So let's go on to next step. How do we check if a character is a space? We're not there yet. We can still do more in step 3. So let's see, we go to sensing. All right, so we have this answer variable, right? An answer will be the variable that stores whatever input you put into here, right? So we somehow need to check that, okay? So let's see, we have a length of answer. Well, that could be useful, right? Because the length of answer is the number of characters in the sentence we inputted. So now we somehow have to compare the current character we're on to the length of answer. So let's see if we have a greater than, right? So we put this here. All right, let me move the comments real quick. So now we have this empty condition here, right? So something's going to be greater than answer, we exit the loop, right? That's the condition that breaks the entire control statement, and we go down to the code underneath. What should that condition be? All right. So whenever we go to the next character, we increment the counter by 1 for current character. So we should probably think about putting the current character in this spot, because this basically tells us that, okay, as long as current character is less than the length of the answer, then we can keep looking for the next character. But the minute that current character is greater than the length, then we know we're done. All right, so that looks like step 3 is done. All right, so now how do we check if a character is a space? All right, so this to me says if condition, right? Because we're looking for a condition being true or not. If it's true, we run some code. If it's not true, we ignore that code. So this to me screams if condition. So you can grab if condition, right, and put it inside the loop. So now what are we checking here? Well, we're checking if the current character we're currently at is a space character. All right, so how can we check that? Well, we're looking for an equality, right? So we have an equal here. All right, what should it be equal to? Well, the equal thing I'm looking for is a space character. So I put 1 space in here, even though it looks blank, there's a space in there. So now we can do is, where am I looking? Okay, had to find the blocks real quick. Had to refamiliarize myself. Okay, so what I wrote in this condition is basically if the current letter that we're at of answer, so this answer represents the string or the sentence. The current character is the current character we're at, the index or the position, right? So the first character is index 0, the next character is index 1, and so on until the end, right? So if the current letter of the index of answer is equal to a space, then we need to do something. So this is our condition. So what should we do? Well, we have this num spaces variable, right? And every time we want to see a space, then we increment that by 1. So that means is we increase the value currently stored in it by 1. All right. So we can do that by just doing the change current character by 1, or another way you can do it is you can actually reset the current variable, set current character to the current character, or not the current character in this case, the number of spaces, and we grab it plus 1. So basically what this is doing is saying, give me the current value of num spaces and add 1 to it and then reset it back to num spaces. So this will increase the number of spaces we have by 1. Okay. So then if that code doesn't run, then we still need to do something underneath, right? Because you want to go to the next character. So we do the same thing we do here essentially. So we just do set the current character to, let's grab a plus operator. We're going to add 1 to it and the current character. So this tells us advance the next character, all right? So it looks like we're pretty much done at this point, but we're missing one thing. We probably want to actually visualize our result, right? So we should go here, add a say block. And what should we say? Well, we should probably say the number of spaces we found in the end, right? So we go here, and we can just put in the number of spaces here. All right. So this program looks like it's pretty much done, but let's test it out. So start the code, input a sentence. We're going to use the example. Hi, my name. And there are 4 spaces here, which is correct, right? Let's try the empty one. So we input nothing. There's 0 here. That's good too. And then what if we had A space B? There's 1 there. There's a single space, right? So yeah, it looks like our code is working correctly. We can just run through it one more time. So we set up 2 variables, current character and num spaces. Current character keeps track of the index of the current character we're on in the sentence. Num spaces keep track of the number of spaces we found in our sentence. We have an input that asks for input from the user, which will be stored in this variable called answer, right? We have a repeat condition that'll repeat until the current character we're at is greater than the length of the entire sentence, meaning that as long as we can go to the next character, we will, because there's another character that exists. We have an if condition in here that checks if the current letter that we're at in the answer sentence is equal to a space. If it is, we update the number of spaces. And regardless of if this is true or not, we want to update and go to the next character. And then we just say the answer. So yeah, this is how you would input a sentence and count the number of spaces using Scratch.